Welcome to the amazing digital circus! My name is Kane.
Animation has always been so embedded into my life that I catch myself regularly forgetting how special it is. Growing up on animation YouTubers, game theory, popular MMOs, Eddsworld and MatPat were two of the only things that got me and my brothers together in front of the TV for hours at a time. I vividly remember coming back from school on a random Wednesday and opening TikTok to a clip from the video announcing his retirement with the caption, "MatPat retiring was not on my 2024 bingo card," and I seriously thought it was a joke until I watched the full video, and you bet I cried the entire way through. And you bet I cried even more watching his final theory video. I can recite so many bits from James and Jaden's videos from back in 2016 that it's actually concerning, and I've spent countless hours of my life rewatching their collabs with Adam. I literally met my childhood best friend because at the time we both watched popular MMOs. For the longest time, I couldn't really think of any specific reason why I was so attached to these things. But after sitting on it, I think the main reason why these types of things caught my attention so early on in my life is because of the fact that they felt special. They felt like they were mine. All of Nobody watched The Odd Ones Out or Jaden Animations or Let Me Explain Studios or Illymation when I was younger. It was something that I could hold close to my heart, my comfort media. I'd sit down with my breakfast or dinner and put on a 4-year-old video of Jaden's, and I'd never get bored of any of the jokes or anecdotes. Because even though our lives were completely different, I saw myself in that type of content, and at the same time, it provided a distraction from my own life. If you've been literally anywhere, you've seen of, heard of, or watched some form of indie media, even though you might not be aware of it. FNAF, Helluva Boss, Animator vs. Animation, Undertale, Delatarune, Puppycat, Ramshackle, The Amazing Digital Circus, Cuphead, Hollow Knight, Until Then, Mouthwashing, Stardew Valley, Murder Drones, Celeste, Spiritfater, Terraria, Don't Starve series, Dark Deception, Little Miss Sunshine, Spirited Away, Coraline. Now, what does indie actually mean? It's happened to me twice when I tell people I like indie shows or music and they say Indian shows or Indian music, and then I have to explain the concept of indie to them. So, indie is short for independent. So an indie project, movie, TV show, book, artist, means that the thing is being created independently. Independently meaning that there are no large companies or brands behind it. So a company like Disney wouldn't be indie, since they're such a huge franchise. But companies like Glitch and Studio Ghibli, for example, would be considered indie, even though both of them still have a team behind the work. One is far larger and has a lot more authority. Independent animation, when it comes to team size, can range from one person to a small group to hundreds. But that's the thing. People don't really care how big or small the team is, as long as they know that their time, passion, effort, and sometimes money is going towards the right people. So, why indie animation? Why is it becoming so popular? Even more popular than big franchises who have been going at this for literally decades. Well, I thought of a few possibilities. This topic has been gnawing at my mind for a while as someone who's in so many indie spaces. What's the appeal? I mean, I feel like I should know this since I'm so into them, but I didn't really. The first two reasons that I thought of kind of go hand in hand, but I'm gonna tackle them one at a time. The very first thing that I thought of is that there's more representation, not even just in the media itself, but also in the team behind it. Characters of color, representation that doesn't feel like the creator felt obligated to include to appeal to a certain audience or shoehorned in. Mental and physical health representation, different types of love, relationships, familial and friendship dynamics. Not only is this amazing to see, but it makes traditionally taboo topics seem not so untouchable. When they're handled with care and shown naturally, it feels like just that, natural. Marginalized groups are able to see themselves in more media, something that big companies have struggled with. If I said that these companies don't have any representation, I'd be lying. But representation with these types of companies doesn't always really seem to go over that well. Either they try and the majority of the public picks it apart for absolutely no reason, or they kind of dig their own grave. So why is it a different story for indie animation? Well, one, it usually feels more genuine. There's a good amount of companies out there who feel like they need to be inclusive just so they don't get canceled or ruin their reputation by people assuming that they're discriminative or bigoted. But when you know that it's a team that doesn't have a reputation that's on the line, if that makes sense, it's easier to assume that they're including this representation because they, actually want to, not because they feel pressured to. And 2, it's more self-aware. Because it's indie, it has more room to cover the nuance of certain topics like discrimination and self-hatred, without fearing their reputation. Indie projects also usually just generally have more freedom to do that type of thing because they're not being controlled by some third source. They don't have to water down their ideas or just completely change them to fit a company's brand or vision for the project. Because while companies are getting better at this, it's still very much an issue. They literally have the liberty to do whatever they want with their creative abilities and resources. Thinking of this immediately made me think of YouTube, and it brought me back to the beginning of YouTube, or its prime, as some people might say. The kind of middle line that a lot of creators would tiptoe, because YouTube didn't really have as many rules at the time, so you could do or say basically anything. Some people took that and ran with it, but I feel like the same thing kind of goes for early TV at the time as well. There were also no limits to what you could do, say, or tell people. And I feel like there's a small sense of nostalgia there when it comes to that aspect. This also kind of goes hand in hand with my last point, but it's still something so worth mentioning to me. You want to know why? Fucking AI. It's borderline depressing how many jobs that people are passionate about, are going to be completely out of the market in possibly just a few years, just because of how much AI has infested every aspect of everything. A Google search, an Instagram post, a tweet, clicking on a literal YouTube video. In the age of AI, authenticity is something that is so greatly appreciated. Because honestly, people don't even care if they think that someone's art is shitty. As long as it was done by them and not something that was spat out from a prompt, they don't give a shit. Take Studio Leica. Their most popular movie, Coraline, took a total of 4 years to complete. 4 years. Almost every element of this film was handmade, most obviously the puppets/main characters. There were 28 identical puppets of Coraline, each of them taking about 3 to 4 months to make, with 10 people working on one at a time. At its peak, the film involved 450 people at a time, 30 to 35 animators and digital designers, and more than 250 technicians and designers. I could keep going, but holy shit, that's a lot of work. And they've even outdid themselves with their newest project, Wildwood. Of course, it's all completely stop motion, but what surprised me when I watched the trailer for it was this.
To bring her to life, Leica animators perform numerous tests with models inspired by nature to authentically craft the movement and spirit of this large avian character. The design team installs 9,000 individual feathers by hand across 2 specialized puppets, one built for breathtaking flight and the other allowing animators intricate performance controls.
9,000? By hand? That's the type of authenticity that I'm talking about. Whether it's hours, days, or years of work put into it, or just the fact that you decided to use your brain instead of a robot's, it's all appreciated. Another thing is just how many types of animation there are. A lot of people think that you need a big team or a lot of fancy equipment to animate something. Animation is literally just moving stuff around. That's it. Once you take away all that fear and perceived complicatedness, it becomes a lot less intimidating of a concept, at least in my opinion. And especially with indie animation studios like Glitch emerging into more of a known space. The fact that indie animated pilots can actually become something. It's not only introducing more people to animation, but also giving people more hope and inspiration into making their own indie projects. And not just digital animation, mixing media as well. 3D, stop motion, claymation, 2D, puppetry, motion graphics. Literally, there are so many options that aren't just traditional animation. And I love that animation is getting so much love and attention in the last 25 years or so, but especially of recent. The thought and dedication and sheer willpower that it takes to animate full time. Animation has always been something that fascinated me ever since I was little, and I've always appreciated animated movies so much, especially stop motion. Holy shit, bro. Coraline and Fantastic Mr. Fox, I am a nerd for that type of shit. And one of the most important things by far when it comes to any type of animated media, voice acting. I feel like with animation, especially indie animation, also usually comes with amazingly underrated voice actors. Voice acting, despite my constant strong love for animation, had never been something that I'd paid attention to until I started to realize how much they, like I said, make or break an animated piece of media. Correct delivery, tone, cadence, they're all things that make a line of dialogue that could be spoken by anyone into something that's beautifully pulled off by a skilled professional. To my knowledge, voice acting wasn't really taken seriously, or at least not talked about as much as it was right now. And I feel like the fact that we're being exposed to so many amazing voice actors is not only amazing to see, but inspiring for others who either have started or want to start their voice acting journey, or who didn't even know that voice acting was an industry in the first place. If you don't get what I mean, just look up the concept of gatekeeping. I fear this isn't a concept that can really be easily explained if you haven't experienced it yourself, but I'm gonna try my best. The most coherent way that I can think to put this is think of how relevant it's become to be able to call yourself an OG fan of something. People like Leve, Billie Eilish, Doechii, Gigi Perez, Nadia, the Marias, who all began to get mass amounts of attention super suddenly. Finding them in those few months before what would mark the beginning of their fame inherently feels special. You feel like you're a part of a community, even if it's a small one. Even if the entire fandom could fit in a bus. It felt like something safe and small that you could control, like a tight-knit group of friends. And even when that group gets bigger and more well-known and talked about, it still feels like yours. The best analogy that I could think of for this is that everyone likes Marvel or DC or Harry Potter or insert popular franchise or series here. But according to the statistics, around 40 million people like The Amazing Digital Circus. It feels personal, even if you know it's not. Like it's untouchable. Like I said, this isn't really a feeling that you could describe easily if you haven't felt it yourself. So if you have any other way of describing it, I'd love to hear it in the comments. And feeling included like that, like you're part of something, is literally a primary psychological need. Not feeling like you belong somewhere inherently makes you feel more dissatisfied in your life. And the need to fulfill that is exactly what fuels some of the best aspects of fandoms and fan culture. Another thing that I've noticed since I started watching a lot of indie animated pilots and series is that they're all new media. When I first heard of the concept of the digital circus, it immediately piqued my interest because it sounded so novel. To be fair, I had just finished the Backroom series by Kane Pixels a few months prior, so I was looking for something with a liminal space type feel, so maybe I was like primed to want to jump into it, but I still feel like even despite that, the idea feels so original. Even though, as the saying goes, there is no such thing as a new story. Humans have been alive long enough for everything to have already been done before. I know this as a writer myself, but one thing that does make a story original is the idea, not the premise. For example, main character gets trapped in another world. Could describe so many other series. But once you start adding in specifics, that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it an idea. And in the age of big companies rehashing the same ideas and making sequels and live actions for movies that really didn't need them, it feels good to have new, fresh ideas that we know were actually thought of from a place of care and not, most of the time, money or greed. I really feel like indie animation is something that's always going to be special to me, and I really hope to be able to see its community grow even more than it already is. Since this video is kind of like an ode to my childhood or indie animation, I have some like creator shoutouts and series shoutouts on the screen right now. So yeah, go support these people. Also, writing for this video made me realize that Eddsworld is 19 years old? What? Oh my god, it really doesn't feel that long ago. That's crazy.